Welcome back to the Card Combo Show, me, Choco Billy. The cards we're going to be looking at today are Ignacio, Scale Toad, Leyak, so we've got some monsters, Chaos Walker of the Wheel, and the Emperor. Let's get to it. Okay, so Ignacio. When Ignacio deals damage to your opponent or to a forward, draw one card. Discard one fire card. Ignacio gains plus 2000 power until the end of the turn. So he's a pretty decent card. It's something that fire really likes is draw mechanics. Generally tends to be more geared towards water in this game, but fire getting that is very useful. So Belias, another draw mechanic as well. Being able to give Ignacio that kind of protection of plus 1000k and first strike means that even if your opponent's blocking and they have some combat trick up their sleeve, they're going to have to do a lot to actually get rid of Ignacio. Unfortunately, things like Diablo will still work, but either way, you're getting a card. Even if Ignacio dies and he deals damage to something, you get a card. So Hecaton, Share, and Titan. I mean, these cards state Ignacio or the forward they choose is the source of the damage, and Ignacio states Ignacio deals damage, so it works. So you can use Titan to just completely destroy something with Ignacio, and you get a card back from it, which is slightly refunding Titan's cost as well, making it effectively a 3 CP. Chelinka, give Ignacio Brave and let him go swinging. Even if your opponent blocks with 2 forwards, you get 2 cards. You deal 2 points of damage, you get 2 cards. I mean, it's all good. Bobby Corwen. This is a fun little combo because Bobby Corwen can party with forwards of any element, but when a forward forming a party with Bobby Corwen is put from the field of the wake zone, draw 2 cards. So even if, say, Bobby and Ignacio formed a party together and they both broke, you still get to draw all the cards because Bobby Corwen's text is still being completed, as is Ignacio's. So you would gain from both of them dying 3 cards. Pretty good going, and you almost definitely have killed something as well. So it's a nice little way for your opponent to have to really think, like, what do I want to get rid of? Should I just get rid of Bobby Corwen, stop them from getting so many cards from it, but then not killing Ignacio, which is also a bit of a pain, or do you just go for the big boy and get rid of him? And Mime, similar sort of thing, but you get a card upon partying. You can make Mime a fire forward, party with Ignacio, get yourself a card, and then regardless if your opponent blocks or if you deal damage to them, get another card. Ignacio refunds himself pretty quickly. It's similar to 2-cost Water Zidane, in fact. Right, Scale Toad. A horrible card. If you see that come down, it says... Anyway, so at the end of your opponent's turn, if your opponent has 2 cards or more in his or her hand, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So unless you have 1 or 0 cards, you're having to discard. That sucks. So Barthandelus. Maybe your opponent will be out of cards, or maybe they have lots of cards, and they're going to want to rely on using the backups in your turn, so they can cast summons and maybe get rid of Scale Toad, or actually rely on some form of combat trick. So Barthandelus being there stops your opponent from being able to do that, because if they've left anything or any of backups active, getting frozen out. So you're not only whittling down their hand, but you're whittling down their backups as well. The Emperor. So if you come up against something like Scale Toad, the chances are if your hand's being shrunk, then you want to try and increase it a little bit. So playing things like Belias to be able to get another card to hand. So if they do that, and you got the Emperor down, they have to weigh the odds. Do I want another card in hand, but they get to dull out and freeze a forward of mine? Now, obviously, if they don't have any forwards, the Emperor kind of sucks, especially in comparison to a lot of the newer ice cards where you can just dull and freeze your opponent's backups, monsters, whatever. But it's still something for them to have to take into consideration. Terra and Sid Randall. So Scale Toad is the definition of tax, right? So having Terra there, and I went for Terra rather than White Tigerless Sea, because Terra, just that one increase is a bit strange, but it's useful because your opponent, the other White Tigerless Sea, they'd have to pay 3 or it gets cancelled. Whereas this is just increase the summons by 1, and that alongside Sid Randall means they have to pay 1, otherwise the forwards come in dull. It's just a lot less offensive, and Terra's, I think, got a little bit more survivability because she can't be chosen by opponent's summons. Her power is less, but harder to target. Buckaboo. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. your opponent's going to be having to discard cards from hand, so rather than having to discard, they're like, well, I'll just play it then. Especially got something like Bartendulus down, they're just going to be like, well, I'm just going to play this forward then. But then they're having to discard cards from hand. Now, the problem with going this, like, super discard route is that your opponent will probably just resign themselves to having to have no hand and just top deck every turn, which isn't very fun, to be honest. But if you are geared towards this type of deck, then this is a nasty combo. And Paul. Now, I sit in the camp that discard and mill are some of the most powerful abilities in the game, because you say your opponent plays a Felthanos. Everyone, unless you've got the immediate answer in your hand there and then, will go, I have to try and get rid of this dude. And that it's always a pain, right? But say your opponent's only got one card in hand, or the top card sitting on top of their deck is Felthanos. You've just got rid of it for playing Argarth or attacking with Paul, something like that. It's so easy to get rid of such powerful cards using things like discard and mill. So these two put together can really start to limit your opponent's options, because if you're just milling away the cards they want and you also make them have to discard that, they're going to be reduced to what they can do. Alright, Leyak. When a forward your opponent controls attacks, put Leyak into the break zone. If you do so, activate all the characters you control, draw one card. Even if you don't have any characters, why you'd be in that situation I don't know, but even if you don't have any characters that Leyak can reactivate, at least you get a card from it. Preesh, now obviously you can make Preesh have Brave through either her own ability or something like Mummy, but, you know, it's still there, and you will ultimately get a card from Leyak. Maybe you dulled Preesh out for using Ignace's ability to just buff something, but ultimately, Preesh will be able to block on your opponent's turn, unless they can dull her after being reactivated. And remember, with Preesh, she gains plus 4,000 power every time she blocks, so it's not just once. First block, she goes up to a 12k. Second block, 16k. If you combine that with a Minwu effect, then... Talking of Minwu effects, Cloud. So Cloud has got a similar ability to Preesh. Any 7 characters, or sorry, any 7 forwards you've got that block, gain plus 1,000 power. And then Aerith with the Minwu effect, being able to negate all damage, or reduce all damage, sorry, that's less than their power. Can be quite strong, and especially if you're going for a... Barret, or maybe even Yuffie, one of the new Yuffies. Got a bit more power, a bit harder to kill, and when they block they gain damage. If you've got Yuffie with Godo in your backup lineup, so it's got first strike as well, that can be quite annoying to have to deal with. And Fiona. So your opponent attacks, reactivate all your backups, use Fiona, go get that card to make sure it doesn't go to the damage. So that's, you know, another good use for that card, is be able to stop the card that you're worried about. You might be like, oh, Star Symbol going to damage wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but I really need it in my backup lineup because I want to play X card from my hand or something like that. Now you can combine that with Yasmat. So Yasmat, obviously at the beginning of your turn you can play things and then they'll reactivate anyway. So combining that with Leyak and Fiona means that a couple of turns before you've even gone to your main phase 1, you could have just drawn 2 cards that you really need. Edge. So you reactivate all your backups. Now, provided they are wind backups, you can play Edge, and your opponent's attacked with something, you've got your backups there, play Edge. He can come down either as an 11k forward, buffing himself, he could buff another 4 forward, or he could just deal 4k to something. Pretty cool. And Tama. So you can use Tama either before Leyak or after the Leyak proc. So I would probably go with the before, just because if you've got your backups open, you can cast Tama, to bring in an Earth forward, then they'll attack, Leyak procs, and then that forward that she brought in activates because Tama brings them in dull, unfortunately. Now, obviously, you can do it after Leyak procs as well. You activate your backups, Tama's there. You can then, say, break Tama to bring in the 5-cost legend Earth Cecil. Obviously, your opponent will have attacked at this point. Hopefully, their forward will be dull, and you can break it with Cecil. And Tyro, I mean, it's a pretty simple combo. You dull Tyro to buff something, you get your Leyak proc, reactivate him, buff again. Chaos, Walker of the Wheel. So he's been a strong card since he came out. It's just an insta-break on pretty much everything in the game, and he's also an EX burst, which makes him extra painful. Choose one forward your opponent controls, break it. If that forward is put from the field into the break zone, your opponent may play one forward from the hand onto the field. So a combo as old as the game itself, using Una. So If the forward doesn't enter the break zone, then your opponent doesn't get to play the card from hand. Job's done. Sid Randall, so your opponent has to pay 1 for that forward they decide to bring in from Chaos Walker. It's, they have to weigh up the odds. Do I play the card? Do I play the card and let it come in dull? Do I play the card and then pay the 1 CP? It's a lot for them to have to consider, and it might just turn them off actually playing the card, Buckaboo. So, there's a theme to this episode, right? Your opponent can play the card from their hand, but they're going to have to discard 2 anyway. Now, obviously that's quite a mean combo, but there are a few instances where your opponent will actually gain some value from it. Maybe the 6-cost Varn being able to bring in maybe 2 3-cost forwards, but the chances are it's unlikely. So your opponent seeing the Chaos Walker and then looking at the Buckaboo is like, really? I can play the thing, but I'm going to lose my hand for it, so is it really worth it? Then Sid FFBE. Their forward comes in, they haven't paid the cost for it, so it will deal them 9k, unless it's one of very few forwards that can naturally become 10k, or if it's buffed, it's probably going to kill them. Ultimisia, so obviously she's like a worse version of Sid Randall from earlier, but with Ultimisia, all the forwards will come in dull, so if they play a forward into another forward, it means that both will come in dull, and also you could work this into some sort of monster deck even. So your forwards come into the field and they don't come in dull unless they are monsters that become forwards on your turn, because they're still entering as forwards. But if you've got the monsters that you have to pay to become forwards, or they become forwards under certain other prerequisites, they won't be coming in dull. So Ultimisia will be making your opponent's forwards enter dull, but not yours. Death Machine. So you break your opponent's forward, they get to play something else, but Death Machine's going to look at it and go, nah, it's broken anyway. You could also use it to force your opponent, so say they've got a couple of forwards and you get rid of the small forward, they can play another forward from hand. Generally, your opponents can't resist the opportunity to play something big and nasty out of their hand for free, right? But if they've got 2 big and nasty forwards on the field, and you get to take your pick and be like, I'm going to break that one, and your opponent knows that, and they're just going to be like, sucks. And even, especially if you've got no forwards on your field, it means that on their main phase, Death Machine's going to break, and ultimately, they're not going to get to break one of your forwards if you could back attack something. So you could work it with Leyak. And Anima. So the way that Chaos Walker would resolve with Anima is Chaos Walker will put the forward into the break zone, and then the forward in your opponent's hand will come into the field immediately at the same step. There's no forward goes to break zone, and then you can interject and put more things in. It's just a case of forward, break zone, forward in hand, onto the field, at which point Anima would see the forward have gone to the break zone, and then dull out that new forward. And Kefka, you just get to pay an extra 1 mana forward your opponent controls goes to the break zone, and you get to draw a card. It's fine by me. And the Emperor, so that's to stop your opponent from having any fun. The characters your opponent controls cannot use special or action abilities, so backups, monsters, forwards, sucks. So Fel Thanos, obviously running these two alongside each other would be nightmarish, because regardless of what it is, your opponent has to choose Fel Thanos. So summons and abilities your opponent must choose Fel Thanos if possible. Even if they're going to kill him, they have to pick him. And then obviously anything of 5 or less would be cancelled anyway. With Emperor down, your opponent's options are limited already, so they have to rely on auto abilities, like some things like Enter the Field, or summons. Now, if they're having to target Fel Thanos and probably be cancelled as well, that is horrible. They are severely limited in what they can do. Flander and Scaletoad. So your opponent may want to have to play more forwards to stop the Emperor from helping you flood the field. But having Flander there means that you can stifle their ability to actually block, and similar sort of thing with Scaletoad is stifling their hand as well. So the Scaletoad is getting rid of their auto abilities and summons from their hand, and Flander is stopping them from being able to block or attack. Ishtola, so your opponent does cast a summon or something, or an auto ability, just use Ishtola there to, nope, that's not happening. Cleone, now Cleone obviously you don't want to be running too many, if any at all, summons, but it's another way to stop your opponent from getting rid of Emperor. Now the chances are your opponent will account for this, and they'll cast some small summon, it gets cancelled from Cleone, and then they cast another summon to get rid of the Emperor. but it's still ultimately more cards out of their hand that they've had to account for, and Cleone will get you a card to hand as well. So a little bit of recursion for yourself. And Unei. So Unei is more about the protection in this case, not an enter a field ability. So your opponent casts something on Emperor to try and get rid of him, and you can just bounce him out and bring him back in to save him. Obviously you can only do this once per turn, but it's just another form of protection for your Emperor. And again, similar to Cleone, your opponent's going to account for it, and they'll probably cast something small which would ultimately kill the Emperor, and you can bounce it to save him, but then your opponent will probably play something else like another summon or another enter the field ability to get rid of him. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you ever so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.